Hey, how are you? You know, in years past, I have sort of laughed at folks who have made videos while sitting in their cars. But it turns out this is a really good place to just sit and think. And it's raining like crazy out, and I'm waiting to go into Food Lion, so I thought, well, I'll sit here and talk to my phone. I'm thinking about heresy. I'm not thinking about heretical things. I'm thinking about heresy as a concept, as an idea. Mostly because here on Facebook and on YouTube, on the internet generally, wherever two people have a disagreement, eventually one or the other will be branded heretic. And get this right, just because you have a disagreement with somebody, that doesn't mean that they are a heretic. It just means that the two of you disagree. First, there has to be some kind of standard. And then if somebody is outside the standard, then that is actual heresy. In fact, that is the very definition of heresy. To be outside the ideas or the norm or the agreed upon parameters of any organization or any religion. If you're outside of that, then that is heresy. In fact, the Apostle Paul was even accused of heresy. We read in the book of Acts about how he worshipped the God of the fathers of Israel after a way that the leaders in Jerusalem referred to as heresy. Some of your translations will say it was a sect, that he was branded a sect. But it's the word, the Greek word, for heresy. So even Paul was accused of heresy because you had 1,400 years of Jewish religion based on the teaching of Moses and the law, and then Paul comes along and says that you can be fully accepted by God and fully justified through the person of Jesus Christ, through the sacrifice of Christ, and not through your own works of the flesh, but through faith. And that certainly flew in the face of the traditions and ideas and long-held tenets of the Old Testament Jewish thinking, economy, and theology. And so naturally, he would be branded a heretic. The point is, even Paul got called heretic because even people disagreed with him. Now, why am I even bringing this up? Why am I sharing this with you while I'm sitting in my car? Well, because I heard a definition of heresy recently that I agree with. And the definition was, if you emphasize one part, one portion, one doctrine of the Bible, if you overemphasize that to the exclusion of other parts of the Bible, then that can become the groundwork for heresy, for thinking in ways that are outside of biblical thought, because you have truncated the Bible and narrowed it down to one sort of pet doctrine. For instance, it is absolutely true that the Bible talks about soteriology, talks about how men are saved. And Reformed theology really emphasizes and concentrates on that aspect of the Bible. And I agree with Reformed theology. And when we talk about the tulip or the nickname Calvinism, that I think is the best explanation of biblical soteriology and the way people get saved. So great, fine, we're in agreement. But there are folk out there who so overemphasize biblical soteriology and Calvinistic soteriology even, that they do all that to the exclusion of the rest of the Bible. For instance, the Bible also talks about ecclesiology, what it is to be a church, how the leaders of the church ought to act, the characteristics that are important for deacons or elders within the church. That is also in the Bible. And if that is not also taught and emphasized, then you're going to end up with an unbalanced sense of what the Bible's about. The Bible also includes prophecy. And if you don't read and teach prophecy, if you don't understand prophecy in its historic setting, which prophets showed up in Israel at what time, what were they talking about, what were the particular historic events that led to them walking on the stage of history, if you don't understand that, then again, you're going to end up with a truncated version of the Bible. Eschatology, the Bible talks about end-time things, future things to come. If you don't understand those things and put them in their proper setting and expectation, then you're going to end up with a truncated sense of what the Bible's about. And so that may not be that overemphasis of any one part of the Bible, may not be a capital heresy, but I think it can lead to heresy. I think it can lead to, like I keep saying, a truncated sense of what the Bible's really about and what the Bible has to say, and it will lead to an unbalanced sense of what Christianity is. Because when Jesus was on the planet, he didn't just show up in space and time and start talking with no background, no backstory, no prophets about him, no Davidic covenant, no Abrahamic covenant. All of that history leading up to him, all those foreshadows, were all in place, and they all prepared for the coming of Christ. And so you have to understand your Christology within the understanding of the history and the context of the prophecies and the promises and the covenants that were made leading up to Christ. Otherwise, you're going to have a very narrow view of who Christ was and what Christ was about and why he was here. So you have to understand, I believe, you have to understand the Bible, while I'm not insisting that you have to have an exhaustive knowledge of it, because no man can have an exhaustive knowledge of the Bible. If it is the Word of God, then no man can have mastery of the Bible. But you do have to have a good overview, a good working sense of the entirety of the Bible and how the Bible works, or else you're going to end up with a very narrow view of who Christ is and what he accomplished, and your theology is going to be truncated by the overemphasis of one part of the Bible and underemphasis of the rest. So I say all that just because I'm thinking out loud, sitting in the rain here in my car, and I'm thinking about what it is to be genuinely heretical, and people calling each other heretics, oftentimes completely unfairly, what genuine heresy is, and how important it is to have a good overview of the entirety of the Bible, because that balances all your various doctrines and all your various views. There was a book that came out a few years ago that I very much enjoyed, called Israelology, the Missing Link in Biblical Systematic Theology. And as people have said in the past, I'm not unique in saying this, if you get Israel wrong, you get the Bible wrong. You've got to understand Israel in order to understand prophecy, and in order to understand eschatology, in order to understand many, many of the things that Jesus said, because he was speaking to Jews, to Israelites, who had the history with Moses and had covenants and promises historically. So you need balance. That's what I'm arguing for. I'm arguing for biblical balance that will allow you to understand the whole of the Bible without an overemphasis on any one aspect of the Bible that can genuinely lead to heresy. It can lead to thought that is outside the mainstream of what genuine biblical Christianity is. Now, there. What do you think? That's what I'm thinking right now, sitting in the rain.